Well, good evening, Melges 24 sailors. Good afternoon, Melges 24 sailors in America, and a little bit later, good evening, Melges 24 sailors in Europe. And this is our first of our North Sails Melges 24 webinars, and you're all very, very welcome to the next hour of what we hope will be a really fun and informative session where we're going to be discussing upwind sail trim. My name is Prof O'Connell, and I'm coming to you from North Sails in Dublin, in Ireland. And first things first, we just want to shout out to all our sailing friends and customers all over the world. We know that it's a tough time for many of you, and we hope that you're all getting through this as best we can, and hopefully we'll all be out on the water sooner rather than later, fingers crossed. So we've got an exciting hour ahead of us, and we've got a really, really good panel of fantastic sailors on our webinar this evening. So I just want to introduce you. We've got my North Sails colleague, John Bowden, and John is there in North Sails America in Charleston. Are you there, John?
Yep, I'm here.
Good to see you. Welcome, John, and thank you for joining us. And from North Sails Italy, Giulio Desiderato in Genoa. Are you there, Giulio?
Yes, I'm here. Ciao, Prof. Ciao, everybody.
Good to see you, Giulio, and a wonderful T-shirt that you've got on there. Very, very classy. And
thank you.
We just want to welcome our special guest, monsoon tactician and Stars and Stripes CEO, Mike Buckley. Are you there, Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Prof. Hey guys, psyched to be here today. Hope everyone's doing well at home, and maybe just a quick shout out to all the frontline workers that are in the trenches, keeping everybody safe around the world.
Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Well, you're all very welcome, and we've got a fantastic audience as well already building up tonight, which is fantastic. So I think what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to talk about upwind sail trim this evening. We're going to try and keep the webinar to 60 minutes, seems to be the general feeling on the way these things go. As usual, we won't be trying to get way too much stuff, so if it runs over, don't be too hard on us. So I think the first thing that we will do is just to give you a bit of a picture. We're going to talk about specifically about upwind sail trim. We probably won't dwell so much on rig tune, although that's an integral part of it, but we'll look at light air sail trim, medium air sail trim, and windy upwind sail trim as well. So I think we're just going to kick it off and probably just talk about the roles on the Melges 24, and we're just going to also give a shout out to the Class Association, and just a good time just to renew your dues with the Class Association. Pirate works very, very hard in the background, and all the local class organizations around the world, so a good time to support them in trying to keep it all running in the background. So just going to kick it off now and just talk about the roles, the upwind roles on the Melges 24. And this magnificent vessel here in the screen is the mighty Embar. And maybe, Giulio, if I could kick off with you, we might just talk about, you know, most boats now sail with 5. So maybe you might just talk about some of the roles here on the 24. You can start from the bow, Giulio, or you can start from the back, or start in the middle. Over to you.
Yeah, I start from the back, and I want to start saying that of course when you jump on board, I think it's a kind of office, so it's really important that everybody have a clear role on board. And start from the back, there is the helmsman that for sure have to be focused 100% of the time to the boat speed, looking the telltale, steering angle, and the boat speed. And then there is the tactician that is for sure the collector of the communication on board. Then on my team, on the Bombarda team, but also a little bit of Nefeli is the new team that I joined. There is a jib trimmer, and is also the Janaker trimmer.
So Giulio, just to be very specific, you know, what is the helmsman's responsibility on the 24?
The helmsman, you know, you have all the controls of the boat in his hands. So you have to manage checking all the time the main sheet, the backstay, the mainsail traveler, and you have to be focused on the speed of the boat. And I think that you have to hear the calls of the tactician, that you have to call the different VMG that you have to sail.
And then, Mike, if I could ask you, you would normally on the monsoon be one step forward there from the helmsman. In terms of that role, what are the principal responsibilities the next person forward from the driver?
I think, you know, every boat's different on kind of the way I like to set up the crew. The tactician's responsible for the jib about 80% of the time, depending on wind speed. Occasionally helps out with the traveler and tacks. And then is, you know, the biggest role is just responsible for the communication of the boat and the overall game plan, so that the helmsman can execute not only the boat speed game plan, but then the tactical game plan as well. Because at the end of the day, he or she has the tiller in their hands and can put the boat where, you know, wherever they're going to put it, and it needs to be in line with your plan.
Great. And John, next person forward, that's normally the kite trimmer, I take it. What's their responsibility going upwind?
Yeah, I'm usually sitting in that spot as a kite trimmer. You know, typically upwind, we're looking for relative boat speed calls. During tacks in very light air, we take the jib sheet away from the tactician so that he can help with the traveler. We found with 5-person teams, and even with some of the 4-person teams, if the tactician can help get that traveler pegged to windward coming out of tacks, it helps a lot, you know, with the skipper being able to find the exit angle and things like that. But yeah, from the middle of the boat, you know, we're talking about relatives, power in the boat, you know, sort of what's the next step on, you know, whether it be rig or what kind of adjustments we can make to make the boat go faster.
And
while keeping our head down, hiking hard.
And the next person forward then, Julio, is the pit person. What do they do?
You know, I think that Prof, and we can see really good really well in this picture. I think that first of all, they have to hike hard, no? And I think that top few crew from the bow have to be really focused hiking hard during the upwind. And in light wind, I think that they have to be really active to come back inside if the wind drop and try to push the boat in every path and every waves. On our configuration, for example, Prof, the jib trimmer or the Janaker trimmer during the upwind is the guy that is calling the path, is calling the waves that are coming. So I don't know on Ember what was going to happen.
We spend a lot of time with our heads upside down for sure. The person on the front then, John, obviously they're the bow, and what's their principal role in the way you set up the boat?
Yeah, I mean, upwind, that front person can be real important. Like Mike said, every boat's different. Could be looking at making rig adjustments, certainly helping control where the jib leads are set at, tack to tack if we're making changes, may have that boom bang in their hands, and sort of helping adjust some of those other controls, you know, sort of that are at their fingertips, the Cunningham, the bang, and such like that upwind.
Yeah, certainly adjusting the rig as you go up through the wind speed ranges. It's possible to adjust the rig from the windward side going upwind, and that's a key responsibility of the person on the bow.
Yeah,
right, guys,
definitely a team effort.
Good stuff. So if we just step forward now, and we just have a look here at some light air upwind shots. Julio, we might just talk about these shots. Initially, I think you took them, Julio, and just tell us why you took the shots, first of all, from this particular angle, and what was the purpose of the camera angle here, Julio?
Yeah, I was in Scarlino coaching the team Bombarda during the Italian Championship last year, and you can see that there are two different angles. The picture on the left, in the picture on the left, I was focused checking the shape of the jib, So you can see that the angle is taken to put in the same line the tack and the clew of the jib. Look in the picture on the right. I'm using this picture to check the mainsail profile. So every time that I follow the team for the lineup, I take these two kind of picture just to check the profile.
And what are we looking for there, Mike, when we're looking at this mainsail picture upwind in this sort of, I guess this is sort of sub-powered or marginally powered or just about powered up conditions. What specifically are we trying to achieve with the main sheet traveler backstay for these sort of conditions, Mike?
Yeah, I think across all the ranges, you're really trying to assess how much power you need or have to make the proper rig adjustments or sail trim adjustments. And in light air, you're constantly searching for power. So you want to do everything you can to keep powered up without stalling and over trimming and kind of forcing power into the boat. So in this photo, it's pretty full main, nice twist as you look from the boom up to the top. It's open at the top, and your telltale's probably flowing 50% of the time, maybe 75% of the time. The boom is above centerline, but when you look at the lower leach, it's basically at centerline or even below. So in all, it's a looks like a pretty good setup, and you just want to make decisions based on how you feel. So you start by pulling the trav all the way up, and if you feel a little bit high and slow, maybe you consider easing it by an inch or 2 inches and seeing how you go.
So in terms of pulling the traveler up, John, how far above the center line should the boom actually be? And, because there's different styles, isn't there, in terms of, what people like in terms of their boom height and their twist. I mean, what determines how far above the center line or how close to the center line the boom should be? How do you set that particular piece up?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, it changes in different wind conditions, but certainly in the very light air, I think it's okay to have your boom quite above centerline, because what we're looking for is getting the twist on the top part of the main right, without having to put too much main sheet on, because if we put too much main sheet on, it puts it gives us too much head stay tension, and it causes sort of different problems. And so as you look in this picture, even though the boom is quite a bit above centerline, the leach part itself is not. The main twists off and opens up quite nicely here in this picture, even though that boom is not above centerline. So I think in light air, where you're kind of, like Mike said, searching for power, we're trying to keep the jib powered up as well as the main. And so cranking down on that main sheet hard will depower the jib. And so we want to keep that real nice and loose and flowing, and keep that twist quite nice.
Very good. Very good. All right, guys. Well, stepping forward here, so guys, to the next slide that we have, and here we have.
Rob, sorry, I have to thank the two guys for the comment about my team, because it looks like that we did a good work.
Oh, very good, very good. So we've now switched continents, and we're now in Miami, and this is Mikey going upwind, probably looking like a little bit more breeze here, with Olympic 1996 soling medalist Jeff Madrigali helming. And Mike, maybe you just take this in terms of these pictures here, and how do these differ when this slightly more pressure?
Yeah, so pressure's up, everybody's hiking. So now it's kind of a little bit more of a fast forward game, depending on the conditions in the sea state. Right here, you see that the boat on the right, probably earlier in the leg, really nice setup, good twist profile, jib looks like it's trimmed on nice and tight. Main is about as tight as it could go, or maybe another click in or so. and good balance. And the guys and girls have something to hike against. You know, with that being said, you know, a lot of the time your trim depends on the situation you're in. And same boat, probably a few minutes later on the left is on the port ley line. They're probably a little bit overstood, but they look to be winning the race. And the conversation went something like, you know, Mark said to Jeff, hey, we have to go 0.2 faster or 0.4 faster. And you'll see that Jeff eased the Traveler and eased the main sheet and probably eased the jib a little bit as well. And they're probably going almost half a knot faster through the water. So it's important as we look at all these slides to kind of figure out where you are in the race and what mode applies to that moment, because it's always changing.
Excellent. And just when Mike there, John, just talked about easing the main sheet and potentially dropping the Traveler, you know, to go a little more fast forward mode. In the light stuff, is there a danger that when you ease the main sheet, you might lose the head stay? And, you know, would you use some backstay in those lighter conditions ever?
Yeah, I think for sure. You know, this is probably one of the most challenging conditions the Melges 24 has to offer, because, you know, you're sort of in that range where you're searching for power to being overpowered very quickly. That's where the crew can really get involved. You know, this is a time where you cannot be lazy. You know, if you know you're going to have to ease the main to depower, you better be making sure that backstay is engaged. We've started to sail the boats with really, really loose rig tensions in this light air, sort of to look for power. And so we've actually had to engage the backstay, even in very light conditions, just so that when you do make those subtle main sheet adjustments, that you're not making a big change on the headstay tension. So it's a real dynamic condition. I think it's a challenging condition to sail in, but every little thing that you do does affect something else. So you want to make sure that you're a step ahead, and that's where the guys on the rail can be calling out these puffs and knowing where you're going to be next.
You mentioned the rig tension there, and I know the black art of rig tuning. You know, we don't have the time tonight to go into it, but I'm sure another webinar topic would be Melges 24 rig tune. But I just circled the lured shroud there, Julio, just to pick up on what John said. I mean, we are sailing with the rigs really, really soft in that light stuff right now. What specifically are we looking to do with the rig setup and this light stuff?
You know, Prof, I think that we are still in the situation where you are looking always for power. So compared to the previous picture, we are sailing maybe with a couple of knots more, but with the crew weight, we can really balance the boat and sail quite flat. So I think that we are still looking to have the maximum power from the rig and control it with the controls that we have. So main Traveler, backstays, main sheet, and jib sheet. But for sure, from the rig, we are still looking for power.
Okay. All right, guys. So look, let's have a look at some video, and we've just got some light air video here again that Julio shot, and it's really interesting because in the video we will see that transition from sub-powered to powered up, and maybe Mike, you might just talk through this video, and I'll do my best to slow it down as the critical moment, as the puff hits. But maybe Mike, you might just talk through this if you would. I'm just going to click play now, guys, and hopefully it'll all work for us.
So I think that you know, this is actually one of my favorite conditions, because I think that there's a misconception that when it's 8 knots, you know, it's kind of easy times on the Melges 24, and you just kind of sit there and go upwind. And if you look here, there's, you know, some small puffs on the water, and the boat's at max power. And what happens when that 1 knot puff hits, it's a great opportunity for the crew to go arms out and hike like it's 25 knots. And you'll see the crew do that here at some stage in this video. You'll see that the third person forward go arms out and really flatten the boat. This is just such a great opportunity for the crew to work together and just be harnessing the power from these little puffs. And it's the difference between, there's the arms out right there. It's the difference between crossing the pack at the winter mark or ducking the pack. And we all want to be the boat crossing the pack. So there's a little bit of a balance. If that puff turns into 2 more knots or 3 more knots, that the helmsman needs to be ready to ease the traveler or the main sheet or pull the backs down a little bit, depending on where they're set up. But just great opportunities in this much wind to make big gains.
So, so John, like when the puff hits in this sub-powered conditions and the crew hikes, what is the focus of the helmsman in that transition zone? Like what specifically does the helmsman need to do, you know, in that 20-second period as the boat meets the puff?
Well, I think that, you know, it's really important for the crew and for the helmsman to know where they are in their power setup. You know, if the helmsman's already at max backstay or something like that, and, you know, he needs to know that so that he can have the main sheet ready to dump. If he's got no backstay on, it may be something where he wants to preload it. But this is where, you know, like Mike said, everyone needs to be involved. It's so easy to forget and be like, oh, this is, you know, the easy part of Melges 24 sailing because it's not super windy. But, you know, being able to hike hard through the puff to where the helmsman doesn't have to adjust anything can make a huge difference in the speed. But also the helmsman needs to know where he's at, know where his settings are. If he needs, you know, if his next adjustment is going to be a main sheet ease or a traveler drop or something like that. I think it's just critical because, you know, the helmsman has to be focused on driving the boat. And so he needs to know where everything is so he doesn't ever have to look down at his controls to know where he's at. And just, I think you always want to be ready to know what that next adjustment's going to be, whether, you know, it's going to be to power the boat up or to depower the boat.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Okay, guys, so we'll probably move on now to medium air, but I think we've discussed a lot there about that transition from being sub-powered to fully powered. And I certainly know from MBAR, it was all about exerting maximum righting moment at the point where the puff hits so that the boat didn't heel and it just squirted forward in the puff, and getting that timing right, that you press hard as the puff hits is absolutely crucial. So I'll just leave that play out and just pop through a few more slides here. And so we're just going to pop onto a kind of a medium air slide here now, guys. And we picked these because obviously we've got Mike here on the left, you know, not hiking and heeling over. So we felt that that was a very, very useful slide to put in. And then we've got Julio's team on the right, looking a little bit more physical. So Mike, what's going on there on the left, and why have you got your head up in the air?
I hope that I was either having a lunch break or maybe I was sandbagging this lineup. But you know, it's my guess is actually we probably weren't going that great, and my head was in the boat trying to figure out why. And when you look at these two setups, and I'll just describe the boat on the left, main's pretty full, main sheet's on pretty hard, and outhaul is fairly eased. And I think we're just a step in the wrong direction towards light air. So we need to be shedding power here. Too much drag, and we're really heeled up. You know, I think as Julio explains the picture number 2, my guess is that the right trim is actually somewhere between 1 and 2. You know, getting a boat that will track and almost adjust itself as the puffs hit and the lulls hit.
Excellent. And Julio, in terms of the picture on the left, we all know that, you know, you take pictures, they're a snapshot in time. So quite often when you take them, things may not be absolutely perfect, but I think it's a good it's a good visual demonstration of the differences. What would the helm or the jib trimmer need to do to move from the trim on the left to the trim on the right? What are the adjustments that one would need to make to move from picture 1 to picture 2?
Yeah, I think that Mike already explained really well the picture on the left. I think that to move on and I agree with him that maybe the perfect way to trim the boat is something in the middle. And we have also to consider that we spoke about the communication, and maybe in the picture number 2, I remember that the guys were trying to playing also to adjust the sails, sailing with the fast OMG and the high OMG. Probably this was a moment trying to sail fast, and you can see that for sure we are sailing with a flatter mainsail in the bottom, and sometimes the auto it's enough to change this shape in the bottom part, and is more twisted in the top. So I can say that for sure we are sailing with more backstay on. And about the jib trim, I think that I remember that day we were in Villa Simius. It was quite puffy, so the differences between the puff and the hole was quite big. So I think that we have to be ready to adjust the jib sheet tension just to make the boat accelerate every time that you want, and this is really important. Then, Prof, yeah, just speaking about the mainsail traveler, the Andrea style to steer the boat is playing a lot with the mainsail traveler and the backstay, a little bit less with the mainsail sheet.
Okay, and John, Giulio just talked about adjusting the jib sheet. I mean, is this just not a case of just pinning the jib in pretty hard and hiking, or how much adjustment in these solid medium air conditions? How many, like, would you adjust the jib sheet much, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to make small adjustments to that jib, and hopefully you're setting that jib sheet up well, in your pre-start prep, and you've got good marks on your deck, your jib leads are where you want them, so that you're kind of in the zone. With this setup here for the 2 boats, you can see they're quite different, and so we've been looking to in this condition, nice super flat water, I wouldn't expect a ton of jib sheet adjustment, but you're always going to kind of look for those tells, a little bit of backwind on the main, maybe a little stall too much on the jib sheet telltales, for that sort of thing, just depending on that condition and the puff of the moment.
Where would you start off your jib leads, John? Like what's the starting point?
So we basically, the 3rd screw head from the back, we drill out, and that's kind of our base setting. We will go, 2 to 3 holes in front or 2 to 3 holes in back of that screw head, depending on the condition. I would say in this setup, we'd probably be sort of right in that screw head, just as a general trend. I don't think, we set the guide up, and the guide is, is really just, it's just that, it's just a guide. It's not the gospel. And so, if the boat needs to be depowered a little bit more because you've got more chop or for whatever reason, you might be better off sailing with the jib lead back a little bit more. If you're, looking for that extra power because you've got the rig maybe just a little bit too tight and the jib sheet's something that's easy to adjust, that's kind of where you go from there. I think the adjustments can be made relatively quickly, and
perfect.
It's an easy thing to use.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Well, we have a question from our chat room from the mighty Taylor Canfield, and this question is for you, Mike. No pressure, Mike, now on getting back to Taylor on this. So Taylor asks, do you get feedback from your helmsman on balance and pressure on the helm? So Mike, that's for you.
Yeah, good question. I think that kind of goes back to slide number 1 about everybody's jobs on the boat and how important it is to have your role defined. And there's no one way to do it. But the helmsman's role, whether they're one of the best helmsmen in the world, like Taylor, or they're a beginner and they're just getting into the class, their role is to drive the boat and provide feedback to the people that are trimming the sails or adjusting the rig. And that feedback doesn't have to be super sophisticated. It can just be really simple. Something doesn't feel right, or hey, the boat to leeward is going much faster than us, because the people on the rail don't have a great view of that. So it's with Bruce, what we like to do is keep it very simple, and too much power, not enough power, and almost just that. And if there's too much power, I know from the rail what I can start doing to diagnose how to decrease power. And if his feedback is not enough power, I can start to think about that. So it doesn't really matter the level of helmsman, as long as you have consistent feedback that you can understand, that everyone can understand, and try to move forward on.
Perfect. And actually, on the subject of depowering, we've got a question from Isako Lamy, and maybe John, you might just take this question for the mainsail setup. Is it better to ease the main sheet or the traveler when we need to depower?
I don't think there's a correct answer on this. I think this is, really whoever's driving the boat, trimming the sails, it's their personal preference. We see it go both ways quite well. Andrea does a really nice job of playing the traveler, where Travis on the Lucky Dog tends to play the main sheet more and more. I think it's a personal style. I don't know that there's a right answer. I think that if the rig setup is maybe a touch light, the playing the traveler could work well, because not adjusting the mainsail adjusting the mainsail affects the headstay tension. And so I think it really just boils down to a personal preference, because I've seen both styles go very well.
Perfect, John. Thanks. Julio, the questions are coming in here thick and fast. So I got a question from my friend Derek Lane in Cork in Ireland. Would you mark the deck beneath the tiller for the helmsman to try and figure out the amount of helm on the boat, Julio?
No, we don't mark the deck, and so yeah. Speaking about our way to steer the boat on Bombarda, I totally agree with what John said, and there is not a way. I think that the most important things is to feel confident and comfortable sailing your boat. So you can adjust more the mainsail sheet or the mainsail traveler. You can use a lot of rudder or go quite straight. It depends by your style. And in my opinion, yeah, with Bombarda, we worked a lot with the mainsail traveler and not moving too much the rudder. We were quite stable in this way.
Actually, Julia, now that you mentioned the rudder, we've got a question from our former class president, Jens. How important is it to keep the angle of heel low as the wind increases, and how does it affect the keel and the rudder? Mike, maybe you'd want to answer that, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think that angle of heel is really the most important tool in any wind condition, and actually at any point of sail. So upwind and heavy air, I think that was the question. How important is it? Very important. And, a lot of it is sea state dependent. These Villa Simius, where the Worlds were last year, was really fun because we had every condition and not only wind, but also sea state. So there were some days where we had these massive waves and 18 knots or even more, and other days where it's dead flat water and 18 knots. So your heel angle is going to depend a lot on sea state. Really important to hit the waves loaded up so that you can carry on through them. You don't want to hit them dead flat, but you also don't want to sail around overheeled. So it's a constant battle to find the right angle of heel. But that is the number one reference point for any helmsman at any level is angle of heel.
Perfect. And last question actually from the chat room just before we move on. And this question is from Arif Gurdenli. When you have more or less power as a helmsman, most of the responsibility on the helmsman, it sits on the helmsman, which is like the backstay, the main sheet traveler. Can the guys on the rail assist at all with adjusting the amount of power. Maybe Giulio, you might take that. Oh, Giulio has disappeared from the world, and he's.
Yeah, I'm here.
Ah, you're back, Giulio.
Do
Welcome.
you hear me? Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. No, of course, the boat is in the hands of the helmsman. On our boat, for example, the big help for Andrea is the communication that he received from Stefano Ciampalini, that is the crew that you can see with the white shirt on the rail, that is communicating with him all the time about the wind situation. And he's the guys that call the tuning while we are sailing. Then sometimes the tactician jump in the conversation if you want to change something for some tactical reason. In this condition, I think in the medium wind condition, the boat is really in the hand of the helmsman. You know, in the light wind, I think that the people on the rail can help him really more, being really active with the crew weight. But in this condition, I think that he can receive an help tuning the boat in the correct way.
Okay, very good. Okay, guys. Well, look, we'll move on now to some medium air video here, and this is some wonderful footage from one of my most favorite places in the world to sail, which is beautiful Lago del Garda in Italy, and it wouldn't be an unfamiliar sight to see people on port tack, because the right-hand side is, as we know, always the way to go in Garda. So maybe, John, I might just hand this to you just to talk through this video. I'll key it up here, guys, and then we'll slow it down. And again, you might just talk through the setup of what we're seeing in the video here in this medium air. So we'll just roll this here now.
I mean, this is just like some of my most favorite sailing conditions in the 24, especially on Lake Garda. You got super flat water, good breeze. The boat's as powered up as you need it to be. Everyone should be hiking really hard. If the winds aren't coming up and down, your initial setup should be about right, and so that you're not having to adjust the rig or play with a lot of the controls a lot. I know, and here in Lake Garda, you're going to want to be bowed down on that port tack, trying to get to the right side of the race course. But in normal conditions anywhere else, this is a real forgiving point of sail. Really flat water. You can afford to sail the boat a little higher, a little flatter. Whereas if you were sailing in Biscayne Bay and some big chop, you'd want to keep the bow down, keep a little bit of heel on, so the boat's going a little faster. Because the penalty for hitting big chop in this condition is going to be a lot bigger, than in the nice flat water we have here.
Beautiful. And Giulio, like, what about heel angle here? I mean, is this about right, Giulio, for these medium air flat water?
Yeah, Prof, in this condition, we were focused to sail with the boat really flat. And as John said, I think in the flat water condition, you can sail also with the sails a little bit flatter, and if you have to point a little bit closer compared to the other condition. And of course, your goal is to sail with the boat really flat and stable. And I think that there is another thing interesting, maybe then Mike can also show us and said the comment. There is a transition, no? So the path is touching the boat exactly in this moment, I think. And there is a mix between using a control, and in this case, Andrea is moving the main traveler, and going a little bit higher with the rudder. So I think that is always a mix, no, between controls and rudder. I don't know if Mike agree with me.
Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that is kind of tactical, right? Lake Garda is, like Prof mentioned at the beginning, it's all about getting onto port. And, there's only a handful of boats that get onto port clean in Lake Garda. Everybody else gets caught in traffic. And so once you finally get onto port, you want to stay there. So that becomes so important between the tactician and the helmsman. Hey, there's a puff coming. When it hits, I want you to float high, or whatever your terminology may be. And so that we can hold our lane here. If there was nobody around us, we'd just have you ease the main sheet or pull the backs down and just go a little faster. But because we have someone on our lee bow, that's not possible. So you really have to focus on the communication and the big picture in a place like Garda, where you have to go on port for, I don't know, six minutes, somewhere in that zone. You know, it's imperative. And so being able to coast up in the puffs is really advantageous.
That's a really, really good topic. That whole business of, do you sail higher and slower, or do you sail lower and faster, and what determines what mode we're sailing in. So if you wanted to make that transition, John, from, you know, let's just say you're bang in the middle of the groove and you wanted to sail a little higher and slower, what would be the things that you would do on board to achieve that higher, slower mode?
I mean, a little higher, slower mode, you want to increase the power in the boat so that you can sail that higher mode, maybe ease the backstay, sheet on both sails a little bit, traveler up some. You know, I think in this flat water, that's a real strong, powerful, you know, mode to get in. But like Mike said, you know, it's great because in this setup and condition and this breeze, you can sort of go in and out of both modes depending on what you need tactically. You know, if you need to put the bow down and go fast, it's one thing. But if you want to sail in that higher, slower mode, you know, it's okay to just sheet those sails on super tight, get everything super flat, and, you know, sail the boat a little bit flatter, because the penalty for, you know, being a little high and slow here is not as big as if there's, you know, more wind or a bigger chop.
Brilliant. Yeah. And then if you wanted to move from that higher, slower mode, you know, and if you want to put the bow down, Julio, and go fast, you know, you want to smash it over to the right hand side on port tack, you know, what are the things that you do to change mode to a low, fast mode upwind?
For sure, I'm going to use the main traveler, and I think that I'm going to put it around the middle of the boat, maybe one track windward to the middle, but sometimes in the most of the time in the middle. And for sure, I'm going to trim more the backstay, and the jib trim is going to open 1 centimeter the jib, so it's going to use a jib sheet. So in this sequence, I think that you have to move the mainsail traveler, trim hard the backstay, and adjust the jib sheet. If this is not enough, you can do the call to take one step of tuning. So I think rig a little bit more the mast.
So step the rig tension up one step. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. If it's not enough, you know, I think that it's important in this medium condition, be always in the middle of the rig tune, just to have the opportunity to power up, or if you need power, or depower if you have too much. Perfect.
All right, guys, that's excellent. So we'll just leave this video on, just play on here, because we'll just speed her back up onto the normal speed again. Mike, any final thoughts on that video here in Garda?
You know, just sitting here wishing we were in Garda sailing right now, and staying at the Lido Palace and getting up to do 2 a days, one in the early morning, and one in the afternoon, and, you know, the absolute battle it is to get on a port and without hitting 10 boats. So looking forward to getting back there sometime soon.
Very good. All right, guys.
Mike,
sorry, Julio.
You prefer start on the pin and cross on port, or start on the committee and tack immediately?
I've never tried the pin end start in Garda, but I've seen it work once or twice. But you know, I like to start.
Too dangerous, no?
Yeah, 10 boats down from the boat and beg my way onto port.
Okay, next time you have to try.
I'll let you try.
It is an extraordinary place to sail. Absolutely extraordinary, but magnificent. Right, guys, so we'll crack on here, and we're now crossing the Atlantic back to magnificent Miami. and we've got some nice strong wind pictures here. We got, you know, 2 upwind shots taken on the center line, and then we've just got a shot here taken from to lure to the center line so we can see the jib. So Mike, what are we looking at here in terms of the differences between picture 1 and picture 2, and what's going on there?
Yeah, so picture 1 is kind of a classic cobra shaped twist profile. So the top of the main is starting to open up, you know, good power all the way up. And on the right hand side, kind of polar opposite. And my guess is maybe the rig is too loose, but they've got a lot of backstay on, a lot of wrinkles coming from the spreader to the end of the boom. And what's happening is the helmsman on boat 2 is he basically doesn't have enough power. And even though it's that windy, and so it's tricked him into thinking he needs to pull the main sheet on harder and harder to get enough heel in the boat. And you can see the jib is really eased, probably because of the backstay. So, you know, it's, you know, the left picture is a really nice setup. Looks like they can trim the main on as much as they want. You know, maybe a little loose on the outhaul, but tough to know. But if you're in boat 2 and you see wrinkles like that, you got to be saying to yourself, you know, hey, something's kind of way off. And in this case, it's probably backstay, and the rig's not tight enough.
Okay. And like in these sort of conditions, John, you know, I've seen, you know, 24s going upwind and 20 plus knots, and some teams manage to have the rig set up so that the mainsail is just, you know, it's just quietly settled behind the rig, and then other teams are going up with the mainsail ragging. I mean, how do you set the 24 up so that you can go upwind in very strong winds with minimizing the drag in the main so it's not flogging? What's the trick there to doing that setup?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is this for me. This is about proper balance, and you know, here we are. I'm in boat 2, and you know, we're not very well balanced. We've got the main end quite tight. The jib is out pretty far. It looks like our lowers aren't on tight enough so that, you know, we can't get the backstay that we're trying to achieve to depower the boat. And so, you know, outhaul's on a little bit tight. Just not good balance here. For me, you know, as a jib trimmer, spinnaker trimmer, I'm heads down a lot. But, you know, if I'm starting to hear that main get loud, you know, the first talk is, you know, are we at the end of our backstay? If the backstay is maxed out, you know, then the next thing we talk about is, okay, we need to ease the jib to allow for a little better flow. It's definitely a good setup here. You know, we see in picture 1, the mainsail is actually out quite a bit, the main sheet. And so there's a real balance between these two setups, I think would be the ideal setup. You know, in boat 1, we've got the jib in quite tight and the main out quite far. And in boat 2, we have the jib out quite far and the main end quite tight. And so I think the balance is going to be somewhere in between. You know, and I think it's a hard thing to see from on the boat, but, you know, like you said, we're looking to have that mainsail be, you know, sort of nice and quiet. We want to be able to go upwind in 20 knots without that thing making a bunch of noise.
I mean, it's interesting, the picture on the left, you know, if I could just try and circle around the lower draft stripes there on the mainsail. I mean, there's a reasonable amount of depth in the bottom of the main here. And obviously, as you move up the sail, the sail flattens out, twists open and depowers. And I suppose ultimately, isn't that what we're trying to achieve, Giulio? We're trying to release power out of the top of the rig, but retain some sort of shape in the bottom to give us some drive.
Yeah, exactly. We have to remember that a mainsail with a shape in the bottom and twisted in the top is an easy mainsail to trim and make a boat easier to steer. It's really important the shape in the bottom, and a flat mainsail is really unstable. So start to flap really nervous, no? So this is we have to think about that while we are sailing. and of course, then you have to adjust the jib. But I totally agree with what John said and Mike said about also the amount of the lower, no? So I think that is not a key, there is not a number, but I think that the team have always to adjust the lower setup, matching it with the amount of backstay that they wanna use. And this is, in my opinion, really, really important. And I finished then just saying that you have to be careful, for example, in picture number 2, that maybe Travis is going to play a lot with the mainsail sheet because he like feel the boat, etc. But if we need power and you take only the mainsail sheet, you are going to over trim the mainsail. So this is why probably we are seeing a flat mainsail with this wrinkle, that it means that we have too much backstay.
I think that is essential. That's the key to Upwind rig setup, is that picture in the middle, that if you pull on the backstay hard and you get those wrinkles at the bottom stripe or up to the first spreader, the mainsail, the mast is over bending relative to the mainsail shape. And as you say, Giulio, you need to tighten the lowers so that it puts the shape back into the bottom, and then you can pull the backstay even harder again. Mike, just talk us about the jib setup there in the picture on the right, Mike. I mean, is it just, simply you're just moving the jib lead further aft and sheeting it harder, or do you still ease the jib sheet, as John said, in the windy stuff?
In Villa Simia, I started easing the jib sheet very aggressively, and it's tough to know, what works and what doesn't. In all my years sailing Melges 24s, I have not been very aggressive in easing in the puffs, but we tried it very aggressively and it seemed to work pretty well. The problem is when you ease it, the bottom of it gets really full. So it's a tricky balance. It's a balance between physically moving your lead back a hole or two and pulling the backstay on, which essentially does the same thing. I think with any of this, there's a misconception that you have to get your rig tuned perfect. Even the best teams in the world, everybody strives to get it perfect, but you just want to get it in the ballpark. You don't want to go out there and have your sail look like picture 2 here. Or you don't want to go out and have your sail look like picture 1, which was the picture before that was of our team. Because then you've got to go too far to get it right. So you just want to just start as you develop, your mind and your eyes to look at the sails and the sail trim. You just want to get it in the ballpark, and then it's a turn here and a turn there that kind of leads to perfection by trial and error.
Right. Very good. Excellent. And so one question there we have from the chat room, guys, is from Kent Pierce, and it's a question about vang tension, and what are we doing with the vang these days upwind? Because I know that on MBAR for the Miami Worlds, Morgan Reeser was very keen on vang tension. What's the thinking there, John, in terms of vang tension and the windy stuff upwind?
I think it's, the vang for me is about controlling the lower mast bend, but also controlling the head stay if the helmsman's playing the main event. If we're having to let out a reasonable amount of main sheet, you've got to have vang on to compensate for that, so that the boom doesn't go up when the sheet goes out. We want the boom to go out instead of up. And so, depending on the styles, like Andrea might not have to carry near as much vang if he's playing the traveler aggressively. But if you're going to be a main sheet trimmer, I think vang sheeting becomes more and more in play. And so you'll start seeing that vang come on more and more as you adjust that piece of the puzzle.
And Giulio, I mean, the vang has a secondary effect, doesn't it, of that when you pull the vang on, it pushes the mast forward and bends the lower section of the main. Bends the lower section of the mast, which flattens the lower section of the main. Is that the principle of what John is talking about? You there, Julio, or have we lost you?
Yeah, now yes again. I'm sorry because I lost you.
Welcome
I
back.
just understand that you. Yeah, I'm back. I understood that you were speaking about the lower mass band due to the vang or something like that. I don't know. I heard some words, but
that's
if you
right.
can do a quick recap for me, it's easier.
Good save, Julio. Good save.
Oh, okay. No, about the vang, you control and again, it's really important the amount of lower, no? So because if your lower are too easy, and then you start playing too much with the vang, the main became too flat in the bottom due to the bending of the mast.
Very good.
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry. And sorry, Prof. Just because I agree with Bombarda, we sail with the hard. We sail with the vang with a lot of vang during the upwind in strong wind. But I totally agree with John that, for example, there are some really good teams. Like I spoke 2 days ago with Lorenzo Bressani, and he told me that for example, sometimes it was sailing in a really strong wind without the vang on upwind. So I think that again, you have to find your style, no?
Yeah, perfect. And so what about I presumably, like Mike, I presumably in windy conditions upwind like this, it's always wavy to a certain extent. I mean, obviously different locations and, whether you're out in the ocean or surrounded by land, but, can you just tell us what's the key to getting through those waves? Because we've all been in the 24 where the bow goes up and slams in, and what's the best way to keep the boat moving through the waves in strong conditions?
Yeah. Well, the key, to me is just kind of minimizing any major, let's call it screw ups. And that can be applied over the entire playbook of sailing, but specifically to waves. No matter how good you are, you're going to hit some bad ones and the boat's going to stop. But limiting the number is the absolute key. So if it's a wavy condition, as a helmsman, your eyes are really focused on angle of heel, because when your eyes are focused on angle of heel, you'll naturally see the waves coming inbound, and then glancing at your telltales and glancing at your boat speed. And so if I'm driving the boat and my target boat speed is 6 knots and I see some waves coming, I think to myself, well, I'm already going target. I don't need to go much faster. I'm just going to go right through them. If my target's 6 knots and I'm going 5-6, and I see some waves coming, I'm going to say to myself, that's when the alarm needs to go off and say, shoot, I got to get this thing going before we hit those waves. So at that stage, you might put the bow down a little bit, ease, heel the boat over just a little bit, and kind of plow through the waves. So it's just your eyes constantly on like a auto rotator of angle of heel, incoming waves, telltales, and glancing at the boat speed so you know where you are. I don't know, Julio, you is that how you guys do it?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I can say that the average speed is important, no? So you have to avoid, if a set of waves is coming or a big wave is coming, you have to avoid to steer the boat in that time too high, for example, or too flat with the heeling angle, because in the case you are going to stop too much the boat. So I think that you are not looking for a peak, you are looking for a really good average speed, and this makes the difference in the long term. This is my point.
Good stuff.
When it's really windy and wavy, I'll communicate from the rail if I see some bad waves coming, just to make sure that Bruce sees them. I know this conversation is about sail trim, but you don't get to have top sail trim if you don't have good communication and a good plan. And I think that's really important, and that can be applied. Doesn't take any talent, just takes a little bit of being prepared and creating a plan. to, and it applies in so many different areas and will help your sail trim and will help your boat speed all over the race course.
Good stuff. Well, on just looking at the sort of things that you do live upwind in the windy stuff, we'll roll on now to our final video of the night, guys. And this is the Bombarda team going upwind in fairly fresh conditions. It's a fairly short video clip, so we'll tee it up and we'll slow it right down. And Giulio, you might just talk through this since you were the man who was coaching. And what are we looking at here in this video, Giulio?
Yeah, sorry, because it's another Bombarda video, but it's about the same session, about the picture that we saw before, and it's really interesting. I think to see the heeling angle that is quite stable, and you can see how Andrea managed and how he passed the waves, no, moving slowly the rudder. He's looking around to check the situation, and I think that now, if I'm not wrong, a puff is coming, and again, is a balance between he play with the mainsail traveler, and so we can see how we manage the transition. Probably the boat overheal a little bit too much, but I think is a quite good way to steer the boat. So this is the moment, you see, a puff is coming, so the boat start to heel a little bit too much, but is ready to ease the mainsail traveler. So I think that the goal is to keep the speed, no, and the boat accelerate again.
That's excellent, Giulio, and it is beautiful style there from the helmsman with the tiller on the deck, legs close together. John, the crew just at the start of the video, and we can go back to the start again. I mean, the crew look as if they're absolutely giving it everything, hiking there, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I love these boats, because you can sit there and you can hike out and you can see the difference that it makes. Here we have 4 guys, they're jammed up together as close as they can get. They're all hiking as hard as they can, heads down. It really makes a difference. And for me, guy who keeps his head down quite a bit, the pain is sort of worth it, to help let it be steady for the driver, and so that his adjustments can be real consistent and real easy. If we're always keeping that power at the same level, his adjustments don't have to be quite as big.
Right. And Mike, the sort of communication, or just to step back from the communication there for a second, with regard to this setup in the video, am I right or wrong saying that like the jib sheet looks as a little eased there? Is that kind of normal in the, I presume, pretty choppy, breezy conditions?
Yeah, it's tough to tell if it's eased or not from this angle. Maybe a touch, but I think you would always rather have the jib a little bit too eased than over trimmed, right? You can recover from being too fast and low. It's a lot of the time it's very hard to recover from being slow and low, which is typically the happens when you're over trimmed.
Very good, excellent, guys. That's really good. I suppose we're actually doing really well here, guys. We've been running for 65 minutes, and we're pretty much bang on time. I'm just thinking, have you guys any final? Actually, we just got a question here, and the question is from, and my pronunciation may not be the best, but it's from Heroja Petrovic. How much rudder movement do you use in the puffs, or would you only try using the mainsail to keep balance? So, John, maybe you'd take that in terms of rudder movement in the puffs and the mainsail.
Yeah, I mean, the goal here is the goal is always to move the rudder as little as possible. I think that goes into your power. If Andre is using the Traveler and the Traveler's all the way down, he's going to have to use the rudder to help keep the boat at a steady angle of heel. If you've got someone like Travis who's playing the main, he's got a little more adjustment in the mainsail. Sort of the goal is to keep the boat fat. In this condition, it's to keep the boat at full speed all the time. And so minimizing rudder movement is going to be good. But it goes back to what Mike said, always checking in with your target speeds. If the boat's going really fast and the puff hits, it's okay to push the bow up a little bit and get the boat going, a little bit higher. If you've got some big waves coming, certainly keeping the bow down, easing the sails a bit, trying to keep the rudder straight is going to be important. So it's all condition dependent, but obviously the goal is to move the rudder as little as possible. I just think it depends on where you are in your power range. It can be an easy way to scrub power if you're going fast and you've got too much power though.
Perfect. Thank you, John. All right, guys. Well, listen, I think we're just coming to the end of the afternoon in your case, and the evening in myself and Julio's case. Just want to thank you very much. Just in terms of the class for this year, any final thoughts, Julio, before we wrap it up?
I have to thank you guys and all the Melges 24 friends for this good evening spent together. It's been a really pleasure share feedbacks with all these friends. And as the most of you, I'm locked at home since 1 month, and I really miss the Melges 24 family, and I really miss the Melges 24 regatta. So I miss you in the water, fighting with and against you. And I really hope to meet you again in the water.
Perfect, Julio. And final thoughts from you, Mike?
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to us. And I think that if you could take, a few things away from today, it's come up with a plan and focus on your specific job on the boat. That's really the best way forward. And try to emulate the best guys. There's absolutely no shame in asking questions. There's no shame in copying somebody else's setup, the way they're hiking, the way they're driving, what they're wearing, doesn't matter. That's how we all got to the point that we are, and we continue to do it every day that we go out on the water. Try to figure out who's going the fastest and why. So hopefully we'll see everybody at the next event. Looks like the Worlds are going to be in Miami in December. And be healthy, be well, and take care, everyone.
Great, thank you, Mike. And John, Melges 24 Worlds in Miami, magnificent place. Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. Like everyone else, can't wait to get back in the boat. I think what Mike said is spot on. It's such a great boat, and I think that's why we've seen the revitalization of this class, is because there's some really great sailors out there that are willing to share information, and so don't be afraid to ask questions. We're going to be doing some more of these webinars, and so get in the chats, get involved, email people. Our email addresses are up. Ask questions, because it's the best way to get better. And I look forward to seeing a really good, strong, competitive fleet very soon. Great.
Well, guys, I just want to thank the three of you so much for some wonderful insights into Melges 24 sailing. Thank you so much for your time, and just want to say best wishes and look after yourselves, everybody in Melges 24 world, and we'll be coming back to you in 2 weeks' time for the next Melges 24 webinar. So good night, good afternoon, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
See you guys. Thank you.
Ciao, guys.
Cheers. Ciao.